Welcome everyone to Hunt the Habitat. A great dog and a shotgun will only get you so far in the uplands. In this podcast, Ann Jandernaw helps us to attain a more in-depth understanding of the birds we love to hunt, their habits, their habitat, and how those change through the year and through the hunting season. Hunt the habitat, find the birds. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another edition of Hunt the Habitat with Ann Jandernaw. I'm Steve Blazer. And Ann, how are you doing today?
Oh, good. It's hot again.
It is. Summer is making another appearance here. It's pretty warm. It's steamy out there.
Yeah, it really is. It's too warm and too many consecutive days of it because it's just, like building, and then it's supposed to rain a little bit later on, but Friday morning, it'll cool down.
Right.
But it's a good day just to sort of stay put inside. It looks nice out until you walk out the door.
Right. Well, if you're a hunter and if you want to run dogs, otherwise it's a great day. Probably most everybody is saying, oh, my goodness, Indian summer, how nice. And we're all going, wait a minute, I can't hunt in this.
Yeah, I can't train dogs in this, and I won't. The only problem is that we've been so dry, and this happens anywhere that it's been dry a lot, is that the vegetation dries out pretty quick. And so I'm seeing leaves coming down a lot quicker than what it normally would. If we get one of those windy days with rain going sideways and all that, and blowing 10 to 20 miles an hour on the lawn, these leaves are going to be gone. Where I'm at, the aspen is probably 20% turned, maybe 30%. But I'm seeing some birds when I can and train when it's not blistering hot, but just that time of year, time to have fun.
Time to have fun. We wait all year for this, and I'm going up with a buddy on Wednesday. We're going to be up there for 3 days. One of the benefits of being retired is that we can go up in the middle of the week and kind of avoid the crowds a little bit. Mm-hmm. And again, it's not going to be as hot. It's not going to be as cool as we'd like. We'll have to pretty much, stick to early mornings. Maybe a little bit of late afternoon, but we're going to have to watch the temperatures pretty carefully. Okay, along those lines, everybody, to all our listeners, this is going to be a treat today. One of the questions that Ann gets most often is, how do you prepare for a hunt and what are you looking for? And Ann's going to tailor this to the early season, which is where we are right now. And I'm going to get out of your way here because this is going to be fascinating. We're all going to learn a lot today.
Well, you pumped this one up, didn't you?
No pressure at all, Ann.
Oh, no, just get it out of the park, please.
Well, and you know what? You and I talk a lot during the course of the week and talk about how things are going, and we talk about preparing for the podcast and such. And you have people calling you saying, hey, what do I look for? Hey, what are the birds doing? And you being a guide, you have to go through this process. And you used to do this a lot. You don't guide as much as you used to, but, you had to go through this process because you had paying customers that expected to see birds. And to listen to what a guide does to prepare for a successful day is, that's something most of us don't get to hear.
That is true. Typically, the clients would call up and you could always tell what you were dealing with. If you were dealing with a true upland hunter or the one that was coming off of working pheasant farms and things like that, or going to South Dakota and seeing hundreds of pheasants and expecting to have that same type of experience in the grouse woods, you and I both know it doesn't work that way. These are two different experiences that are night and day. Hey, I say, grouse hunting is a good sport to teach patience, control, and thinking. And I also said, too, that I tell my clients, it's like playing chess in the woods with a moving target. So there's many people that came to me for hunts that had never hunted grouse, that all they knew was maybe quail down in Texas. Or there was other ones that came and said, I've hunted, but I did this when I was younger. Or, there'd be others that wanted to learn. It was all over the board. Some had dogs, some didn't have dogs. And it's important to go into any hunt with not these super high expectations. Just let it unfold. But as a guide, you know what the other person's thinking. It's like, okay, I hired this guide and they're going to give me a lot of birds. And so-and-so said this many flushes and they had that many flushes. And as a guide that you're up against, whether it's true or not. Or sometimes you're up to 5 years ago.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, 5 years.
The cover was different. The cycle was different. And yes.
Time of year and everything. And it's like, so now you're having to deal with 5 years ago. And I'm like, really? He's like, yoo-hoo, listen to what you just said. So this is like, what are you doing, Talise? Stop rolling around. She's upside down. Hey, you guys have to understand, there's dogs in here. There's lots of dogs in here. This little munchkin, she's like on the back of the pad, shimmying all over the place and whacking her foot against the wall. So sorry, but it's like, I was getting interrupted pretty bad. Pascal, no, I'm not going to pet you right now. No matter how cute you are. I have dogs. Besides the podcast, there's a dog staring at me right now.
Like saying, Mom, I want some attention. Oh, yeah. I want it now. Yes.
Okay, spoon. Lean. I have this long spoon, and if I wave the spoon, they're like, well, she really does mean it. So, on that note, we'll switch to what I do. So, when I was guiding a lot, and I guided right close to 50-day average every year, you have to think about their expectations. And then, you can't usually meet every single one. What I found really works is that you bring the person in on the hunt. And I honestly always have felt the hunt needs to unfold in front of them instead of them chasing a GPS. And the reason why is it's seeing that dog. We all know how important the dog is because I started out hunting with no dog. I walked him up. But seeing the dog and understanding the connection between the dog, then starting to understand scent. I was told by one of the writers of Milwaukee Journal it was like I was calling the hunt as we would go and say, okay, we're going to shift this way. The dog's doing this. And I would tell them exactly what the dog was doing so that then they had a better idea how to maneuver in the woods. And by the time it was done, I could take someone typically that had never really dealt with going through the house woods to basically understanding the importance and reading the dog. And we all go on cover. I'll tell you what, the dog and the cover together will give you a really good picture. And one thing that really was a pet peeve of mine, it's a false point, drove me nuts. I would stand there and then start to correct that situation very politely, but with the understanding, what did that just tell you? Well, there was scent there. So what's so false about that? I said, don't you want a heads up that something's happening? And I said, let's connect the dot with the next scent and the next scent. And, all of a sudden we see where this bird is tracking toward. Oh my, it's going to the tag holders. Let's swing you over and put you between that bird and that tag holder. Maybe you'll get a shot. And so the connection between seeing the hunt and seeing the dog gives you a perspective of, one, where the dog first hit scent. How strong is the scent? Is the scent fading? Is the scent still strong? Is that dog so tense that its muscles just so hard? You could see it. The eyes are focused. The mouth is closed. And it's got just 1,000-yard stare going ahead as if it could see the bird. But instead, it's got the scent. And the muscles start to lose their tension. The eyes start to shift. The mouth opens a little bit. And you can tell that scent's fading. So reading the dog tells you what that bird is doing. And the angle of the head, the body. The stiffer and intenser the body, the stronger the scent. How long does it hold that position? How long is the body intense? And like that dog, and if you tell it okay, or whatever you have to command to release it, and please don't tell me you go tap the dog on the head, because I think I would rather be in a position to shoot than to walk back to the dog. So, to each his own, but there's no way I'm going to go right back through that brush to that dog and not be standing out there and saying, okay, Kinsey.
Yep, you can move now.
You can move. And I'm ready.
That's a hot topic in the dog community. Yeah,
well,
that's a...
They can do what they want. Now, I'm not doubling back to that dog. It makes absolutely no sense to me, because why should I fight the brush and the hands? In the meantime, the stupid birds walked off. I had a lot of people that came that were taught to do it that way, and they watched us, and they told me, there's no way I'm going to do that again. It's too hard to get back to the dog. I said, you're really not working with the dog. But what you need to do is translate and create a command that that dog knows it can release. And the mistake I made many times was I had to eventually come up with a different term other than okay, because the client would say, okay.
Oh, no.
And sometimes the dog would move a little bit. And so my dogs eventually got to the point they knew what the routine was. As soon as the dog hit scent and did a quick double back, like, oh, I think I got something, I slowed the hunt down right there, right on that note, because that dog's not going to lie to you that it has scent. That dog is giving you a heads up that, yeah, I think I've got something here, but I don't know. And with the young dogs especially, that's a good place right then to verbally roll. And the reason I taught a lot of my dogs to roll there is because I was also allowing my clients to get into position. And that would also allow me, if I was hunting by myself, to start getting in position. That's my first heads up that something's going on. In the meantime, I'm also scanning the cover. I'm looking left to right. What's the high? Where's the low? Where's the conifer? Where's the density change? What's open? What's not open? How am I going to walk through here and get from point A to B to where I think that bird... Oh, by the way, what way is the dog looking? And more of the times in the early morning, or the morning hots, the birds are coming out from low and they're going high. And I don't mean high at huge elevation, but it's a gradual rise in the elevation. And when that bird thinks that someone is around, he'll start to typically drift back down unless he's close to a trail, and then he'll get to the edge of that. And so then I would send one client to the trail if there's a trail nearby, shift the other client down and out and around toward the lower part, and I'd stay in the middle and then release the dog. And I'd say, okay, tracking high left, tracking low right, or straight ahead. And then the dog needs to treat the scent like it's crystal. That if you push too hard on it, it's going to break. In other words, flush. So these guys would get told what the dog is doing. Jerry is looking to the left of you, but a little ahead. Fred, it's going to angle down there. It's pulling up. You shift up a little bit from your edge. And I would gradually shift the hunt as we tracked by people. Usually it was two, one on either side of the dog and at 45 up. So I'm making a funnel, literally. And I'm trying to hold that bird inside the center of that funnel.
In a pouch, sure.
Yep. And so that's what I would do. But some of the things that I would be reading why I'm going is density, especially where it's dense. What cover would that bird try to hold up on? What cover would the bird try to maybe flush out from? Like I mentioned, they'd get to the trail edge and they'd flush, or they would just run into the tag alder and you'd try to block that. And eventually, if there's a clearing in the clear cut, like this area where maybe some vegetation didn't just, how do you put it? This is like a small, tiny minute opening, but it becomes an edge within the clear cut. You look for those because a lot of times when those birds get to those openings, it's just like treating it like a trail. Whoop, up, flush, out. They won't try to usually run past that. They usually go flush. Go ahead.
And as our listeners are envisioning this, okay, how you are reading a point and how you are working with your clients, and of course they're thinking about, all right, how am I going to do this with my buddies? How, as you position a client or a friend left and right of the dog, how far are they even with the dog? Are they out ahead of the dog? How are you managing where they are vis-a-vis where the dog is? Are they staying even with the dog and moving forward as the dog moves forward, or do you have them out ahead?
It depends a little bit on the season. In the early season, usually those birds aren't running that much, so you don't want to send them too far ahead, as though the bird will go between the dog and the person. And what I would try to do is have them just a little ahead of the dog. But as the season progressed, I'd make them a little farther ahead.
Okay.
To block, because the birds are going to run more. Typically, unless you're in an area that has never been pressured, and those birds do not know what pressure is. And I can guarantee you, 3 times of a bird being pressured by dog and guys, it learned very quick to run. I've been watching my quail do the same thing here out in the woods. They're not hanging around. Bam, they're gone. Because I put pressure on them.
Okay, but now as you're talking about, I know we're tailoring this to early season, but as you mentioned later in the season, and I know it all depends, but what does out ahead mean? Does that mean 40 yards? Does that mean 30 yards? Does that mean 75 yards?
Okay, so I always would go back with the dog. To me, that was always the safest place to be.
Okay.
And then I could read the dog and what's ahead. And I would say in the early season, for me and the dog, because we were always together, it'd be about, I think, probably 80 feet off
80.
the
Okay.
Yeah, 60 to 80 feet. And then you're getting to about half gun range by the end of the season. But then that presents another problem, is that you'll see the bird all of a sudden double back and try to come back between you.
Got it.
Because the bird doesn't realize that. I once had a bird almost run into me, the dog. I said, guys, you got a problem. What, Aunt? I'm staring at the bird. Do not turn around here and shoot at me.
Okay.
One of the guys says, well, it was a fleeting thought. A couple times I've hit the deck pretty fast. And you don't, at the moment, you don't know how close it is, but I don't care. I see the swing and what's coming, and I'm on the floor.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we've all done that. I used to do a lot of learn-to hunts for pheasants with young shooters. And, they all mean well, and they all turn out to be really good hunters, very safe hunters. But when they're 12 years old and they've never shot at a live bird before, and that bird gets up, instinct takes over, and every single instructor has had to hit the deck at least once. So I get it. Yep.
Yeah. So, but it's, it's the speed of how you're also getting, if you watch this, like from what the first initial point to the next point, will educate you on how smart the bird is and how much pressure. If it's the next point is very close, that's a dumb bird. It's a real dumb bird. Or that's a bird that's never been pressured. He doesn't know what it is. I mean, how often do we see now the painting? Bird flying, dog on point, hunter behind, and it looks like some New England painting.
Right.
That happening. Well,
it happens, but not more than a couple of times a season,
If that.
Yes.
If that. I don't know. Maybe my birds are just smart up here. But it's good. And some of the things that you have to think about is, okay, so you're working that bird and everything, is that when that bird flushes, and if that dog doesn't move, don't just go ahead. I'd be yelling at the guys, don't move. There's another bird. And so-and-so, make sure you mark where that bird went down if you know for sure it went down. And that right there is the nightmare for a guide. You got another bird. You got one you think is down. You don't know if it's crippled, if it just folded. And then you've got the dog still pointing. And then one time I had 3 go down and the dog's still there. And I'm like, you guys are going to be responsible for knowing where these other ones are, And then we finally had the other ones go out and they had gone through shells. And we found the birds, but I was really worried we wouldn't because I've seen it where these birds have buried under the grass.
Sure.
I had to stick my hand, which freaked me out. I was in a cedar swamp, and there was a lot of water, and I was going from rut to rut to rut, and the dog's pointing under a rut. I mean, that's the last place I wanted to put my hand in that dark hole. And sure enough, I trapped the bird. Every horror movie came back at me like, oh, there's something black monster in the swamp or something.
We're you had a badger, so yeah.
Yeah, badger in a cedar swamp that's flooded, and the dog is trying to get it from me, and the bird's flopping, the bird is soaking wet, and I hear the going, did he get it in? Why not? I was soaking wet. The dog was wet, and I gave this to client. He says, well, you can have it. I said, no, it's your bird. It's wet here. So I made him carry the wet bird. So there is some neat things that happen, but when that dog is just on point, it won't move. It means it's getting a level of scent that dog has to have to say, you just fired the gun, multiple shots, and I'm not moving. Think about that.
Yep.
Another one gets up. And the patience that the dog has to have, and the excitement of it. The respect for scent and to hold. And I've seen this happen quite a few times, and you're just amazed that sometimes, and I've seen it's usually, when you push birds to a point, or when there's been lots of snow coming in, and there's a dense area with conifer and shrub component, really thick, nasty stuff, and it's dry under there, and those birds have congregated there. And it's like popcorn coming out, and it's just like, are they done? But you got to watch that dog, because not only that, you're watching the cover and how it's changing. And you got to think about, what does the bird want? He doesn't want to be chased for the next 3 to 5 minutes. He's going to start drifting one way or the other. Very few birds, except for the young birds of the year, go straight and keep going straight. They seem to go and start to drift, and they drift to the density of color. And basically, they're going to drift to an area where, if you've ever seen them up in a tree, that they can start to stand tall and look like part of a bush. And those are things that these birds they're camouflaged really well, and basically they want to get away from you. I mean, that's how they'll program.
So what you're saying, though, is when a bird, and you've been kind of alluding to this throughout the whole conversation, when a bird is running or walking away, it's not doing it randomly. It's got a place in mind. It could be, some hazelbrush. It could be some tag elders. It could be some conifers, but it's got a place in mind that it wants to head.
And some of these places, you got to think about it. It's never been there before. There's times when those birds, because we're into dispersal right now. I've already heard males drumming. We're in dispersal right now, so these males right now are moving around. The hens are moving around. The brood is going to start getting broken up here over the course of the next few weeks, and then they'll regroup again. The hens will regroup in amongst the males. So some of this is just playing new territory. So instinct is telling them, and I honestly believe, and I can't prove this, but density and the amount of light versus darkness, that contrast. Because when I would look for where I think something looks birdy, I would look
dark.
Okay, dark. Where's the dark spot in the cuts? Where does it look dark? That's the thing I'm looking for. It's not, oh, look at all these trees, they're spaced really nice. Okay, that's nice because that means I have nice canopy. What would a bird be seeking? What does the bird want out of this spot? And that's important. What does the bird want? Because if you don't figure that out, you're just walking through the woods. I'm not saying you got to think like the grouse, but what you've got to understand is, what does the grouse want? And it's all basic density of the habitat. And most people think, okay, it's the density and spacing of the trees. It's also the density of the shrub component in the understory under those trees. It's also how far is the denser habitat from where the bird feeds. Is it a half a flush, a quarter flush? Can you run to it? And during the early part of October, that distance will widen because every bird is moving around and everything. But as winter comes, that distance will shorten up. Their whole environment will shorten. So right now, we're in the stage where everything's a lot wider, and these birds are moving around like, okay, don't you think we should take a turn here? This looks interesting here. No, this one looks interesting. Let's go over here. Come on, guys. Let's all go this way. Or I hear something. Which way do you want to go? Oh, no. Where do we go? And I mean, it's like, Mom told us to freeze. Don't move. That's what they're doing. You know, if I had to put words into these birds, it's like, and then the next thing is, oh, it's coming. What is it? Dong, 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 dong. and then
Here's the bell.
Yeah. He was like, well, stop. What do we do? I don't know. Yeah, I haven't gone through this. And you, Mom didn't tell us about this. Dong, dong, dong. Bam. Uh-oh. Henry decided to flush. It didn't go well. Okay, we don't want to be around this. So, I mean, basically, to put it in a comical way, that's what these birds are doing. It's like, so the next time, it's like, uh-oh. I remember what happened. Henry got shot in that dong dong, and something on four legs was coming at us. So, move, get.
I am out of here.
Yeah, it gets worse as the season comes because, you know, it's like, I don't know why Mom didn't tell us anything about this. I mean, I'm sorry, I make comedy out of it. Right? What I really love is when they go up in a tree and it's like, you don't see me.
Oh,
I stretch my neck up so high. And it's even funnier. Guy saying, it's up in the tree yet. I said, well, yeah. and it's like, what should we do? I said, I'll tell you what. I'll shake the tree. You step over there. You can't shoot until it's 20 feet away from the tree. And I said, now it's going to come off the limb, drop, and then go. They'll miss it every time.
Well, that's okay. I've got a very good friend, and he's going to hear this, by the way, who wanted to shoot one out of a tree. He had been hunting for a couple of days, hadn't shot a grouse yet. He says, doggone it. He said, this one I am owed. And birds perched up there, and he missed. He missed the bird in the tree. He just flinched, and I think he felt really uncomfortable shooting at a bird perched in a tree. It was more out of frustration than anything else, but he flinched enough that he missed it. He still, and this was 5 or 6 years ago, he still gets abused for that shot. But yeah, that'll happen now.
I mean, I had this one time, the dog did fantastic tracking. It was a dog that was an Elview English pointer that was guiding with. Her name was Rain. And she was just beautiful, black and white, small, compact English pointer, and tenacity and tracked, and just a phenomenal dog to work with. And it was funny. So we get to the brush, and she had it pinned right where, and the one guy was on one side, and the other guy was on the other side. And finally, the bird flushes, and I expected to see it drop. But it didn't. Instead, all of a sudden, in slow motion, the top of the aspen tree came down.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop laughing. The other guy couldn't stop laughing. The one that was shooting smirked.
Hey, we've all done a little pruning. with our shotguns. So, hey, and pivoting a little bit, okay? So let's talk a little bit about habitat, okay? So now you're getting ready to take clients out, and it is as it is today, okay? We're in the last couple of days of September, first couple of days of October, and you're figuring out where you want to go.
Okay.
You're doing your scouting, okay?
Yeah.
And what are you looking for? How do you prioritize things? What do you do?
Well, in the woods, so my window of opportunity is extremely narrow.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to hit it when the birds are feeding. So look at it this way. I would go out, and I knew I was going to meet those guys around 7 o'clock and maybe 7:45, and I wanted to be in the woods by probably 8 o'clock to 8:15, somewhere in there. I wanted to be in the woods. And I could tell if I hit it just right, because I'd started out, front of my pants would be wet. The birds would be moving by the time they're starting to be a quarter dry. Then, as they get almost fully dry, 3/4, the birds have already fed. Because you know when it's going to warm up really quick, then what happens is that the birds get their feeding done early. And that's how that works, is that you've got to be ready to go and basically be there when the birds are feeding. And the birds aren't going to wait till it gets hot. I mean, why do that? They're going to feed at the transition. They're going to feed as the dew comes up. They're going to feed as the sun starts to go up across that aspen cut. And then the dew is starting to break and leave. And once usually the dew is completely off and your pants are dry and the dog's tongue is starting to hang out profusely and you got to stop. For me, I don't push my dogs gently. You guys can do what you want to, but I will not bring my dogs in that. I mean, I value my dogs too much, and I respect their ability and their drive to want to hunt, and I'm not going to use it against them. So, we got our hunt in, and I tell people up front, I'm not going to do a hunt and kill my dog for a bunch of birds. Mm-hmm. It's just crazy. So, we're going to work on what window we have. This is when we would go out, and basically temperature usually starts jumping at 3 degrees. But when that temperature starts jumping 4 to 5 to 6 degrees in an hour, that's when you know that's part of your window before it hits your cutoff window when you're going to stop hurting that dog. Because the bird's already fed. The bird's going to feed when the sun starts to come out. And it's not telling people to park in the 2 tracks and all that ahead of time. You can sit there with their flashlight on. I'm not telling you that at all.
It's not deer hunting.
But I'm telling you, timing when your moisture comes off. And think about this. If you're on the side that's hit first by the sun and this clear cut wraps around to the back side, well, take the side that the sun hits first, work that first, and then leave the backside for the last part of the hunt because it'll be cooler still until the sun gets higher in the sky. So I think I'm answering your question. I don't know. I've lost track.
Well, you talked about timing. Let's talk about what you're looking for in terms of cover. Okay, so now you're going to do the morning hunt. Mm-hmm. Okay, and
I missed the cover thing, didn't I? Got off on a tangent. Not that would ever happen.
Never at all, no.
No, never. Also, when I think back on some of these cuts that I've had that I like to work, I always have my favorites. I need a low area, and I like a very defined low area, meaning that's typically the area that has an aspen conifer mix, some hazel brush, because those provide corridors of escape. But they're also corridors that they come out of. Think about it that way. An escape corridor going into the lowlands is the same as let's go out that funnel to where we want to feed. So a lot of times along that funnel are places to feed, like hazel brush. Right now, the birds are in the aspen trees, eating aspen. long as the aspen isn't like dried out, but they'll eat a lot of aspen. They're going to be messing around with the salads on the floor. So trails that had some salad, aspen that had moisture still in it that's not all dried up, so that would typically be a lower edge. And sometimes your aspen on the east facing side will dry out sooner than the one on the west, just because of the way the sun hits everything. I like places with shadows because the birds will move through the shadows, and then they'll get to where they want to feed, and then they eventually will slink back in. And it's finding these funnels that were these places that, okay, we've got thick conifer and brush area here, and not too far, they'll walk over here. I'm into a big clump of winterberries, hazel, and then a little bit I'm in another clump with some white spruce or some balsam fir clumps. And you think of it as a bird, I'm going to connect dark, light, dark, light, dark, light. I'm connecting dark areas. So I can go from this one to this one to this one. And if I have to escape, I know exactly how I'm going to funnel back. Or I'll get to the end of this one and I'll flush and go in. So those are the things that you have to think about, is think of the connecting areas that give cover to the bird to either move up into the cut or move down to the escape area, the denser stands. I'm looking at the floor. I want a lush floor. I don't want stuff completely dried out. I'm looking for winterberry. You might not see the berries on it, but typically, if there's any bit of drought, the berries drop off the winterberry. But if you find the areas where the winterberry still feels soft, not crunchy, then that's something I'm looking for. I'll take time to look at the logs. I'm not saying you're looking for a drumming log, even though you'll occasionally come across them. But as I'm going, I'm looking for feathers. I'm looking for droppings. I'm looking for where a bird might pause, that a bird has been through this area. Also, listen for drummers. Right now, it's the adult drummer, the male of last year, that is drumming. And he's drumming because he's receiving pressure from the juvenile males. Basically, you're telling the old guy to get the heck out of there. We want your spot. And don't be surprised if you hear the one drummer, you may have 2 or 3 other juveniles in that area. So watch your dog. That's not the time when you're working with an adult drummer and you think, okay, let's stalk into this. Don't get after your dog if he switches directions a little bit, because that means he's possibly picked up scent of a juvenile in the area. And I guarantee you, the juvenile is clueless and the drummer's going to escape because that's his home turf.
Right. The reason he's drumming in the first place is because there's another male in the area, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. They're in a transition stage of where they're leaving the brood range and that they're going into where they're going to eventually spend the winter. So they're searching for where they're going to end up. So they're on the move. Did that sum it up?
Yeah, it does. It does. And I want to bring up one of the things that you talked about on an earlier podcast. And this goes back to June, and you hit this pretty hard at the time. Okay. Early season hunts, particularly when the temperature is a little higher than we'd like, have a destination in mind. Get in, get out before you run.
Funny. So when I look at my maps, one of the things I do, okay, my cut's here. I usually try to say I'm going to run the edge of the cut, maybe come back up to the trail or something like that. And then I'm going to shift over, possibly hit another cut on the way back. Where's my water? Is there any water in here? What's my shade? Am I going to go through hardwood first before I hit that area? Because we got to think coming back, that hardwood would still be shade until about another week or two from now, and then it won't be. So measure that. Measure the route you want to take. Think about the water for your dog. And yeah, you better have in mind point A, B, C, D, home. And be ready that if it warms up too quick, because look at the temperature by the hour and how quick it's going to jump. And I'm saying is that once that dog's hot, it can't smell very well.
Yeah.
Not with the tongue hanging out his mouth. And, people don't seem to get it that if they can't scent well with a wide open mouth, they're miserable at that point. What, for all of us to just enjoy watching them do this? I like to see my dogs tip-top condition. I like to see that everything done with ease. And struggle, if they struggle a little bit, I want to end it as fast as I can because I want them comfortable as much as I can do it. They're already in shape. But when you throw the heat at them, the drive they have will push them past the point many times where you're chipping away at the foundation of their heat tolerance. So know your path, know your pattern, watch your dog. The other thing, too, is you guys need to teach your dogs to have patience and timeouts. Where the dog will sit down, chill out, find a place to just let everything settle, and then take the hunt and stop it for the sake of the dog, and just let the dog recover, cool it off.
And I want to bring that up because that's something that, again, you and I have been working on this podcast since early spring, late winter. And you've talked about that timeout concept on numerous occasions. So I just got back from Montana about a week ago. And one of the things you get out there, you have certain days where you can hunt a good portion of the day. You have other days where it gets warm pretty quick. And I used that. And I'll be honest, I hadn't done that a lot in the past. The whole, I water my dogs and try very hard not to push them past the point where they should be. But the whole idea of sitting down, kneeling down next to your dog and facing them out into the wind, watering them well, and then letting them sit there for 10, 15 minutes and let that tongue retract it's a great tool. It's good for you. It's good for the dog. And that's something that you have talked about on more than one occasion over the course of these past podcasts.
Well, and the longer that dog takes to get back to normal, you're pushing it too far.
Yes.
If it takes over 10 minutes, you've pushed it too far. I like to see if I have to sit down with my dogs, I want them less than 5 minutes. Back to the mouth is closed.
Yep.
And they're relaxed. And then I even let them relax another 10 minutes. So if they totally just settle down. Mm-hmm. The test of my sled dogs when I was racing is that when we finally came across the finish line and got back to the trailer where we were going to hook them up to put them back up and water it and all that stuff, is how quick did they recover? If your dog's 15, 20 minutes to recover, one thing, it's too hot, and the other thing, the dog might be older and not in shape, which then you're really doing some damage, and you ask too much for that dog. You can go through a hunt. Now, this isn't an excuse to be out in 70, 85-degree weather. I mean, to me, there's no excuse for that. And I'm just going to say, this is my podcast, so I'm going to say how I think it is. And
go for it.
I really don't care. Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to abuse the dog.
No.
I mean, those dogs will do everything for me. I saw my sled dogs do the same thing. And the drive that they had would kill them. And these dogs would do the same thing for the hunting. And so it's our responsibility of owners to take care of them, not just to be something we take down off the shelf and then go out and hunt and say, oh, yeah, the dog came back really tired.
Well, and for most of us, these dogs they're family members. They're not tools. And that was our goal in Montana. We wanted once the temp started to, even though out there, the humidities are very, very low. Once the temps started to approach the high 60s and up to 70, we wanted to be done. We wanted to be just back at the truck. We tried to get up. We were very, very fortunate because we had temperatures high 40s on a couple of mornings. And so we had a lot of time to hunt in the morning where the temperatures were pretty moderate. But once it got to 60, we wanted to start heading back. We wanted to be done. And, just again, because you're out there Some of these people are out there the entire month of September. Okay, I wasn't. I was out there for 8 days. But anyway, and you've given us. Go ahead. Keep going.
Just a second. One of the things is, you may hear me get wound up about dogs, the care of the dogs, but you got to realize I've come from dealing with dogs, from sled dogs having up to 75 plus dogs that I took care of, and I raised from pups, and it ran for me, and I learned early on to take care of the dogs, and I always felt like even the dogs that I raise that I sell, it's very important for me to see these pups fit the right person, a person that's going to love them as much as I do. So I am very much focused on the care of the dog here, not just the hunt. The hunt's great, and I want these dogs to do what they're born and bred to do. But I also want to, at the same time, during even the hunt, and being respectful of their drive, not ask them to do more than what should be ever asked of them under certain conditions.
Yeah, we have to be the adults in the room, don't we?
Yeah, they're not where you push a button and say, okay, go, and you're on autopilot. Because you know what? They'd give you everything and then drop over dead.
Yeah. As we look to wrap this up, is there anything else that we should be talking about in terms of early season strategies, what you do when you're bringing in clients?
Well, and that's the thing. When I used to do a lot of guiding, I would pick my cuts based on, because I knew it would typically be warm, how quick can I get to the key areas of the cut and pattern the birds, and learn the patterns of the birds. If you go in, write down what time you're in, what the humidity, the temperature, and how quick it warms up. You'll learn a lot by how quick something warms up or where you need to be when those birds are moving out of the cover, and the moisture and the change in the moisture or the wind. So I'm looking for younger habitat. When I say younger, I'm looking at 10, 11, 12, maybe that 9 to 10, but it doesn't have to be a perfect floor, but they need that little bit of shrub component in there. Because think about it this way. There's a little bit of shrub component, then there comes a time when they sort of go through everything to head wherever instinct's telling them to, and then it's back to shrub component again with the cut and conifer. So it's what they're leaving as brood range, and they're transferring over eventually to the male's range, which is very structured.
All right. And Ann, we covered a lot of ground, and this was great. And thank you. And again, everybody's going through this, okay? Everybody's thinking about, what am I going to do? We're going to talk more about this on our next podcast as we look at early season strategies. And thank you again. It's
no problem. And you guys just take what works for you. You talk to 10 people, and maybe 4 or 5 things out of those 10 people. Grab what works for you, develop it into your own style, and then go out and hunt your best friend. 4-legged.
Yep.
Sometimes 2 and 4, but whatever.
All right. You have a great day, and everybody remember to hunt the habitat.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Ann. Take care. We'll see you.
Bye-bye.